Hello and welcome to the Institute of Museum and Library Services informational video, the 21st Century Museum Professionals Grant Program Applicant Information Session. My name is Mark Isaacson, one of the program staff here in the Office of Museum Services at IMLS, and I'll be narrating this presentation for you. The goal of this video is to provide an overview of our 21st Century Museum Professionals Program, referred to as 21MP, as well as the process of preparing an application for funding. The video is organized into 6 chapters. What is 21MP? This introductory section explains the purpose and design of the grant program. Next is what can 21MP grants fund? And this section provides detail on the types of projects funded in this grant program and the amount of funds that can be requested. Next is the application components, where we introduce the different components and documents that are needed to create a grant application. We go into detail about 2 of the application components, the narrative and the budget. And then finally, some tips and next steps. The complete set of instructions for how to prepare and submit a 21MP grant application are found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity published on grants.gov and also available on the IMLS website. Please refer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the most detailed information to prepare your application. To get the most out of this video, we recommend that you watch it in its entirety. This will give you an understanding of the 21MP program, the types of projects that can be funded, and the necessary application components. You may also want to review the Notice of Funding Opportunity before, during, or after you watch the video. Notices of Funding Opportunity, also referred to as NOFOs, are documents that detail the requirements of each of our grant programs for fiscal year 2024. All of our NOFOs can be found at imls.gov/grants. As you navigate the application process, you can use this video as a reference tool. And if you'd like to skip to a specific section, please use the time bar or the links in the description box to navigate to the different chapters. In this section, we will answer the question, what is the 21MP program? Providing information on the purpose and intent of the program and who it is designed to serve. The 21st Century Museum Professionals, or 21MP program, provides grant funding opportunities to advance the growth and development of a diverse workforce of museum professionals. The 21MP program fulfills a strategic objective for IMLS to support the training and professional development of the museum and library workforce, which is listed in our agency strategic plan for 2022 to 2026. IMLS is legislatively authorized to create and operate this grant program in 20 U.S.C. Chapter 72, Museum and Library Services, Subchapter 3, Section 9175. The 21MP program supports projects that offer professional development to the current museum workforce. We also support projects that employ strategies to train and recruit the future museum professionals. And we support projects that support evaluation efforts to identify and share effective practices in museum training and professional development. IMLS recognizes the important role of strong local and regional networks as an essential tool for providing peer-to-peer learning, training, and mentoring opportunities. The 21MP program encourages applications from museum associations, museum studies programs at institutions of higher education, and museums that serve as key parts of the professional learning and training environment. Applicants to the 21MP program may include museums that serve as key parts of the professional learning and training environment. And museums, like all applicants, must meet certain requirements to be eligible for IMLS funding. Your organization must be located in one of the United States, 50 states, its territories, or the District of Columbia. And your organization must be a unit of state, local or tribal government, or a private nonprofit organization with tax exempt status. If you meet those two requirements, then the next step is to consider what it means to be eligible for IMLS funding as a museum. And basically, museums must have at least one full-time or equivalent professional staff person, paid or unpaid, have a physical location that it owns or operates, have been open to the public for at least 120 days in the year prior to the application deadline, and own or use tangible objects. And museums can be, standalone organizations or part of a larger institution, such as a college, university, tribe, or state or local government. The 21MP program is also open to any organization or association that engages in activities designed to advance the well-being of museums and the museum profession. Applicants in this eligibility category may be national, regional, state, or discipline-based associations or related organizations that primarily serve the museum field. These organizations, like all applicants, must meet certain requirements to be eligible for IMLS funding. Your organization must be located in one of the United States' 50 states, its territories, or the District of Columbia, and your organization must be a unit of state, local, or tribal government, or a private nonprofit organization with tax-exempt status. Also, the 21MP program is open to institutions of higher education. An institution of higher education includes public and nonprofit universities who may offer museum studies or related programs that support the training of museum professionals. These programs may be in the form of undergraduate, graduate, or professional and continuing education. As an institution of higher education, like other types of applicants, you must meet certain requirements to be eligible for IMLS funding. Again, your organization must be located in one of the United States' 50 states, its territories, or the District of Columbia, and your organization must be a unit of state, local, or tribal government, or a private nonprofit organization with tax-exempt status. In this section, we will answer the question, what can 21MP grants fund? Providing details on the types of projects and associated goals within the 21st Century Museum Professionals Grant Program. Like so many of the IMLS grant programs, the 21MP grants are intended to support project-based activities. So let's take a minute to consider just what that means. The Project Management Institute has a good definition, which is a project is a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. They also further explain that a project is temporary because it has a defined beginning and end, and therefore a defined scope and resources. A project is unique in that it is not a routine operation, but rather a specific set of operations designed to accomplish a singular goal. And we recommend that you keep this definition in mind as you conceptualize your IMLS project. Think of it as a temporary, non-routine set of activities which collectively have a beginning and an end in time, a defined scope requiring specific resources, which are designed to accomplish a specific and singular goal. Now, with a solid grounding in project-based design, your project should also contain a few additional key characteristics that are essential in the 21MP program. First is in-depth knowledge. The project design reflects a thorough understanding of current practice related to training museum professionals. Inclusive approach. This refers to employing inclusive strategies to reach target audiences at multiple institutions. Also think about audience focus. The project should engage museum staff, leadership, and volunteers, really at any stage of career development. And measurable results. We want your project to generate measurable results that tie directly to the need or challenge it was designed to address. And successful projects should exemplify all these characteristics and will then fit well within the 21 MP grant program. Now it's time to consider how your project aligns with the specific grant program goals and associated objectives. Goal 1 is to support the professional development of the museum workforce, including those from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds. Projects that have a primary focus on the current museum workforce are aligned with this goal. Supporting the Goal 1 focus on the current workforce of museum professionals are 2 associated objectives, and you can select one or both of these. The first objective is to develop new or enhance professional development and training programs for the museum workforce. This objective applies to any project that is creating a new training program or expanding an existing training program with a target audience of the current museum workforce. And the target audience can be for people at any stage of their career. It might be early career, emerging, experienced, senior level, all levels, or any level of stage of their career. It's for you in your project to design and describe the target audience. The second objective under Goal 1 is to support the assessment and evaluation of training and professional development programs, and to identify and share effective practices. This objective is essential for those projects that will be conducting rigorous evaluation and assessment of training programs, to analyze and distill those results, and share findings with relevant and interested sectors of the museum field and professional training and higher education ecosystem. Now let's look at the second program goal for 21 MP. Goal 2 is for projects that will recruit and train future museum professionals, including those from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds. Projects aligned with this goal will have a primary audience focus on the future workforce. Supporting Goal 2 with the focus on the future workforce are 3 associated objectives, and you can select one or more of these objectives. Objective 2.1 is to increase the number of students from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds enrolled in graduate and undergraduate museum-related programs. This objective connects to projects that directly involve museum studies or related programs at institutions of higher education. Objective 2.3 is to recruit future museum professionals from diverse and underrepresented backgrounds through paid internships or mentoring and fellowship opportunities. And this objective aligns with projects that focus on the recruitment, placement, and retention of people entering the museum field, and may involve activities such as paid mentorships, paid internships, mentorship opportunities, or other activities that foster the connections between training and professional development and higher education students and job opportunities in the museum field. Objective 2.3 is for projects that support assessment and evaluation of recruitment, training, and higher education programs to identify and share effective practices. Now, this objective is essential for those projects that will be conducting rigorous evaluation and assessment of programs focused on the future workforce. This can be focused on evaluating new programs or conducting retrospective or longitudinal analysis of existing programs, and to share findings with relevant and interested sectors of the museum field and professional training and higher education ecosystems. Now, regardless of the program goal selected, all 21 MP projects must stay within a specific range of funding in this grant program. Your project budget can request a minimum of 100,000 to a maximum of 500,000 in federal funds. Keep your budget aligned to the scope and scale of your project and include all costs necessary to complete the proposed activities. And in this program, all project budgets are required to have at least a 1-to-1 non-federal cost share. Now, here are some examples to illustrate that point. So if your total project budget was 200,000, you would be able to request 100,000 in federal funds and provide a cost share of at least 100,000. Now, let's say your total project budget was 500,000, then you would be able to request 250 in federal funds and cost share another 250 for a total project budget of 500,000. Now, if your total project budget was $1 million, then you'd be able to request 500,000 in federal grant funds and provide a cost share of at least 500,000. So again, the federal share, the minimum is 100 and the maximum is 500,000. And cost share can take a number of forms. Among them are cash, staff time, volunteer time, third-party contribution, grants from other sources, and support from foundations or state or local government. Cost share cannot come from other federal sources. In this section, we will introduce the components of a 21 MP grant application and provide an overview about the required, conditionally required, and supporting documents. The 21 MP Notice of Funding Opportunity includes a complete list of all the application components, and most of these are created by applicants and saved as a PDF for uploading as part of your application package in grants.gov. The table of application components lists which application components are required, as well as those that are conditionally required. For example, some components are included in the application depending on the type of applicant or the type of project. These are the required documents, and all applications must include the documents listed here. Omission of even just one might result in your application's rejection. Also important to note, there is a 7-page limit for the narrative. If you exceed the page limit specified in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, we must remove the extras before your application goes out for review. So make sure your content fits into the page limit specified, and make sure the number of pages holds when you convert your documents to a PDF. The second category of application components is that of conditionally required documents. Some applications must include 1, 2, or even all of these, and so it's your job to figure out which are required for yours. If you're applying as a nonprofit, you must include your proof of nonprofit status, such as your IRS determination letter. If you're using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate in your budget, you must include a copy of your final rate agreement. And if you will are creating digital products during the course of your project, then you must complete and submit a digital products plan. And just like the required documents, if you forget one of these or omit one, it might result in your application being rejected. So please note that the term digital product includes any digitized and born digital content, resources or assets, and software. And so if you're creating any of these types of materials, you should include the form with your application. The third group of application components is supporting documents. Supporting documents are optional. You may submit some or none, including but just include only those items that will supplement your proposal. This is not the place to introduce brand new information. Rather, it's an opportunity to provide documents that support your project justification and your work plan and your results, as well as your budget justification. For example, have you identified a partner or consultant whose involvement is key to the project's success? Well, if so, a letter of support or commitment would go a long way to reassuring reviewers that they are on board and the project will succeed. Now, we recommend that you be respectful of your reviewer's time and avoid any temptation to include hundreds of pages of extraneous material. So being judicious really does help and work to your benefit. It's important to include what's helpful and directly relevant to your project and stop there. In the following sections of this presentation, we will focus on these application components, the narrative and the budget. Go to the notice of funding opportunity for complete instructions on how to prepare and complete all of the application components. In this section, we'll go over the questions you'll need to answer in your project narrative and offer details on the review criteria associated with each section: project justification, project work plan, and project results. Let's talk about the narrative of your proposal. You have 7 pages to cover 3 very important issues, and the notice of funding opportunity provides lengthy guidance on what the narrative should cover. First is the project justification. And in this section, we'll ask you to tell us which program, goal, and associated objectives you're going to address, what need, problem, or challenge you're going to address, who's the target group for your project, and how have they been involved, who are the beneficiaries for this project, and how will the museum field benefit from your project. Now, in section E of the notice of funding opportunity, under review criteria, you'll find a list of the questions that reviewers are asked to consider when they review your proposal. It's a good idea to refer to these as you craft your narrative to be certain that you are providing reviewers clear, solid information, and that you'll see that they correspond fairly directly with the prompts you are given to write your narrative. Reviewers will want to see how your project connects to the goals of the 21 MP program. They want to understand how relevant data or best practice has been used to describe the need, problem, or challenge. They want to know that you have appropriately identified the target group and beneficiaries for your proposed project, and how stakeholders have been involved in the planning and design of the project. Now, one of the prompts in the project justification section of the narrative is the identification of the need, problem, or challenge that your project addresses. And it's a foundational part of your application. So keep these points in mind. That the federal government wants to invest in something that's going to get better, right? Something that's going to improve with the actions taken in the grant. So as you define your need, problem, or challenge, articulate what will get better as a result of your project as precisely as possible. Will someone learn something or develop a skill? What's going to happen? You want to identify why it is important that this particular change happens and hone your problem definition carefully and use clear and succinct terms. And include data that will support your problem definition. Next in the project work plan is where we talk about the who, what, when, and how. Who will do what activities, when, and using what resources. You should explain how you will track your progress towards achieving your results and what you'll do if you need to correct course. We also ask you to think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. And I'll talk about that again in another slide. And again, the reviewers are given this list of questions. In section E of the notice of funding opportunity, you'll see this list repeated. And reviewers are asked to consider what, when they review your proposal, is to see if you've provided effective and substantive responses. So for example, they want to know how your proposed activities are informed by relevant theory and practice. They want to know that you've clearly stated the goals, assumptions, and potential risks that have informed the design of your project. They want to know that you've discussed how the consultants and service providers have the skills necessary to get the results you want from your project. And that you've allocated adequate staff time and resources to be successful in completing the work. They also want to know that you've developed a method for tracking your progress and making changes when necessary. Now, I mentioned risks earlier, and we do ask you to think about risks that are inherent in your particular project. And if there are risks, how you've taken that into account in your planning. And there's no checklist of risks, but every project probably has them, and the best proposals will show that you're aware of them and have thought through a plan for dealing with them. So look at your activities and think about what could go wrong and focus on the ones where your experience tells you, yes, that could happen. And think through some steps and how you would respond. We know things sometimes go differently than expected, and we just want you to be prepared by identifying some options. So here's an example or two. So a project may be dependent upon fundraising to generate the cost share, but it's not completed by the time the application is submitted. So what will the institution do if that money is not available by the time the project gets underway? Or maybe a project is going to do a listening session with staff. And what if staff feedback suggests different needs or issues or challenges as a priority for training? Or a project may be structured around interns, and what will happen if one or more interns drops out? How do you replace them mid-project? Or maybe you have a key partner or consultant and they are no longer available. What do? These are just a few examples. And again, we want you to just think through what is likely to happen with your potential project. The third section of your narrative should be devoted to articulating your project's intended results. And this section is your chance to convince the reviewers that your project will result in something getting better. The need or problem you identified in your project justification will be addressed directly, and it will be diminished or eliminated altogether. So we ask you to tell us what data you will collect and report in order to measure your project's success. And if your project's going to generate some tangible product, we want to give you the chance to describe that product and make the case that it's going to be useful to your target audience. And last but not least, we ask you to tell us how you will sustain the benefit of the project and what's going to happen after the grant period is over. And again, the reviewers are going to be looking for to answer these kinds of questions when they look at the narrative. These are also found in section E of the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Basically, all of the results should tie back to your need, problem, or challenge. We often hear, though, that defining intended results and success measures is challenging for applicants. So it's worth spending a moment here to talk about results. So let's think back to the question we referenced a few slides ago when we talked about defining the need, problem, or challenge that your project is addressing. And if you said someone will learn something, how will you know that? And maybe you said you want to advance equity in the museum field. Well, how will that be measured? The focus on results and measuring success in meaningful ways is not new, and there's been a tremendous amount of work done on ways to measure success and measure results. For you as an applicant, though, we encourage you to consider using a logic model or an outcomes-based evaluation tool to explain your intended results and your plan for achieving them. So to recap, your narrative has 3 sections: a project justification, a project work plan, and project results. And you have 7 pages for that. The sections are all equally important. Write clearly, address what we asked you to address in the questions, and keep an eye on those review criteria. We're telling you here exactly what the reviewers will look for, so make it easy for them to find it and understand it. In this section, we will provide information on what to include in your project budget and budget justification, and provide some examples of allowable and unallowable costs. An important component of your application is the budget. This is the part of the application where you specify all the costs associated with your proposed project. The budget consists of two required components, the IMLS budget form and the budget justification. The budget form is a fillable PDF that accommodates up to 3 years of project activities and expenses. The budget should include the project costs that will be charged to grant funds, as well as those that will be supported by cost share. In-kind contributions to cost share may include the value of services such as staff time, volunteer or consultant time, or equipment donated to the project between the authorized start and end dates of your project. All the items listed, whether supported by grant funds or cost share, must be necessary to accomplish project objectives, allowable according to the applicable federal cost principles, auditable, and incurred during the award period of performance. The budget form can be downloaded directly from the IMLS website. As you develop your budget, keep in mind that there are certain costs that are either allowable or unallowable according to federal regulations. The allowability of a cost item for all federal grants are specified in the Code of Federal Regulations, sometimes referred to as 2 CFR 200 for short. And using the 2 CFR 200 as a basis, we've developed a short list of allowable costs that are most commonly seen in grant applications. The Notice of Funding Opportunity includes this partial list of the most common examples, and we've provided this here as a reference. And these costs may be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for with federal funds, or what you will pay for as part of your cost share. The rules of allowability apply equally to grant funds and cost share. And when completing your project budget, be sure to check that all the costs you include, whether grant funds or cost share, are allowable. There's also some costs which are unallowable according to the federal regulations in 2 CFR 200. The Notice of Funding Opportunity also provides an abbreviated list of unallowable costs, and which we've shown here as well on this slide. Now, allowable costs may not be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for, nor can they be part of what you will pay for in your cost share. Unallowable expenses should not be anywhere in your proposal. So as you work through your application, compare your list of proposed expenses against the list of allowable and unallowable costs. And after you've had a look at that, if you have questions, specific questions about the allowability of a cost, you can contact us and we'll be happy to talk you through the concerns that you may have. In addition to the IMLS budget form, you'll also prepare a budget justification. This is an opportunity to provide in more detailed narrative format an explanation or justification for the project costs. The budget justification should be written to follow the cost categories in the IMLS budget form. In the justification, you will identify each expense and show the method of cost computation used to determine each dollar amount, including any that you may have consolidated and summarized on the budget form. In other words, this is the place to show your math. So for example, in the salaries and wages section, you should identify each person whose salaries or wages will be paid with IMLS funds or contributed in cost share, provide their names, describe their role in the project. Document the method of cost computation by including the base salary or wages for each person and the percentage of time each person is allocated to the project activities. This may be shown as a percentage of time, number of days, or number of hours. If cost share is being provided by unpaid volunteers, explain how you arrived at the dollar amount used to represent the value of their services. Likewise, in the section for supplies, materials, and equipment, you should list each type of supply, material, or equipment you propose to purchase and provide as cost share. Now detail the number and unit cost for each item and explain how you arrived at the dollar amounts. And you can also provide vendor quotes or price lists as supporting documents with your application. In the final section of our presentation, we offer some application tips and next steps. We can only make grants to eligible applicants that submit complete applications, including attachments, on or before the deadline. So here are some tips to help you do that. Start the process early. By watching this video, you're off to a good start. You should also become familiar with grants.gov's workspace. There's many good features, such as the opportunity to collaborate with others in creating your application, as well as a validation process that allows you to correct errors prior to submission. Tutorials are available on grants.gov. Be sure your application is complete. Check it against the table of application components in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. You also want to make sure that all application components are in the proper format and follow the correct naming conventions. And finally, submit your application in grants.gov well before the deadline, so you can correct any errors and avoid any issues before the deadline. Now, it's important to get your application submitted through grants.gov before the deadline. We don't accept any applications by email or regular mail for that matter. And in order to submit your application in grants.gov, you must have an active sam.gov registration and a unique entity identifier, or UEI. Make sure your registrations for both of these sites are complete and your accounts are active and that any necessary passwords are current. These registrations do expire periodically, so do not wait until it's time to hit the submit button to check on them. And you should coordinate with any other staff members, such as your authorized organization representative, who may hold the accounts and passwords you need to submit. Now, both sam.gov and grants.gov websites have their own help desks and help features and FAQs. So if you run into technical issues with either of these sites, reach out to them directly. There are many components that make up the entire application and narrative, and the narrative is an essential and critical part of the package. So remember that the peer reviewers, who are museum professionals from all types of museums, will be selected by IMLS to read each application and provide constructive comments on the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed projects. They also base their reviews only on the information contained in the application. So don't assume that a reviewer or IMLS will know something about your museum or your proposed project unless you tell us about it in the application. So to help make sure your narrative is as clear and complete as possible, here are some tips. Revisit the Notice of Funding Opportunity and follow the narrative outline. Use headings and subheadings or numbered sections in your narrative to make it easy for reviewers to read. Be sure to consider the review criteria associated with each section of the narrative. Avoid acronyms, generalities, and jargon. Remember, the people reviewing your application are your peers, but they may not be totally familiar with your particular shorthand or jargon. So make it easy for them to understand what you mean. And one advantage to starting your application early is that you can ask a colleague or someone with fresh eyes to review everything before you submit. Ask them to act like a reviewer who's seeing it for the first time. And maybe you'll get some good feedback. Now, here are a few final important notes relating to 21MP applications. Applications must be received through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on March 1st, 2024. Your application will be timestamped by the grants.gov system. After the application deadline, IMLS staff will review your application for completeness and eligibility, and you'll hear from us via email if there are any problems. Next, we will select experienced and knowledgeable peer reviewers to read your applications and provide scores and comments based on the criteria outlined in the NOFO. IMLS staff will examine the budget, your financials, and your track record with past and current grants. We then prepared materials for the IMLS Deputy Director for Museums and the IMLS Director. And by law, the IMLS Director is charged with the authority and great responsibility of making final award decisions. And in early July, we will notify you by email of the award decisions and provide the scores and comments created by the reviewers. All 21 MP projects must be scheduled to start on the first day of August 2024. Now, in conclusion, as you read through the NOFO and prepare your application, additional questions may arise before the deadline. And we can help you with learning more about the program or other programs at IMLS, address any specific concerns you may have about the application components, and help you understand the review process. You may contact IMLS program staff by email or phone. Contact information is listed on the grant program landing page on the IMLS website. You may also schedule a counseling call to meet directly with program staff and use the links found on the grant program landing page to find an available time slot on our calendar. And you'll then receive an email with a calendar invite and Microsoft Teams meeting link. Again, I want to thank you for listening to our presentation and wish you the best of luck in preparing and submitting your IMLS grant application.